Welcome to the Medal of Honor podcast with your host, Tiffany Marks-Ching. In this series entitled, Take a Knee with Tiffany, we hear from military service members and veterans who share their personal stories about some topics that are quite taboo. These topics span from mental health to addictions, domestic violence, sexual assault, physical assault, and suicide. After these 15 stories are shared, we will hear from a panel of mental health professionals talk about trauma and, if untreated, can lead to addictions or suicidal ideations or attempting suicide. They also explain the different types of care available by a mental health professional. Let's join Tiffany now with this week's guest on the Medal of Honor.
Welcome.
Hi, state your name.
Olivia Nunn.
Scott DeLucio.
Kim DiFiore.
Eric Hellman.
Kim Campbell.
Steve Souls. Michael J. White Sr. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
And that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God.
So help me God. So help me God. So help me God.
Welcome to the Medal of Honor podcast, veteran stories of strength, courage, and perseverance. My name is Tiffany Marchink, and I am your host. For this week's episode, I sat down and spoke with a Marine Corps veteran, Ricky Johnson. Not only is he a Marine Corps veteran, he also is a North Carolina certified peer support specialist with a veteran stamp. He is trained in Wellness Recovery Action Plan, or the acronym WRAP, Question, Persuade, Refer, QPR, Suicide Prevention, and Trauma-Informed Care. In addition, Ricky is certified in Critical Time Intervention and implements this model in his daily work activities. Let's tune in now to this week's episode as we hear Ricky share his personal story about his addictions that he had to battle, the loss of his son by suicide, and everything in between. When you and I were talking previously, you were describing your experience with addiction, and you compared it, I believe, to being a service member and transitioning from military life to civilian life. Do you care to expound on that?
I call it a comfortable misery. For me, it was in an addiction. When you spend so much time in these environments, you develop these skills and tools to help you to survive, and you become good at it. And the thought of transitioning to a new environment, like transitioning from active duty back to the civilian sector, it's the fear of the unknown, and we doubt our abilities, and it's overwhelming. You know, that time we spent in that environment, that becomes our identity. So the thought of leaving that behind is very scary, and that's what it was like for me, transitioning from 10 years of active addiction into recovery. So that's what I mean by comfortable misery. Now, I think a lot of veterans experience that, you know, transitioning from active duty into the civilian sector.
2 questions for you, and you can answer them in whichever order, however you want to. For you, I'd like it if you could talk a little bit about your recovery process and what that was like, and how similar it was, as you mentioned, to transitioning from military life to civilian life. The second thing I'd like you to speak to is your relationship with your son. You mentioned having a son at the age of 17 when you were 17, and now that you're out of the military, as you transitioned and as you went through rehab, how did all of that impact your relationship with your son?
When did my recovery start? So, Tiffany, for you to get the full effect of who I am, I'll paint the picture for you. Besides being a 5-year Marine veteran, I'm also a 3-time convicted felon for methamphetamines and DWIs. I've done some time in prison. I spent 5 years on felony probation. I paid to the state of Missouri close to $16,000 in fines and court costs. Tiffany, the past 25 years that I could legally drive, I've not had a driver's license for 17 of those years. My last DWI, I lost my license for 10 years, and I'm eligible to get them back today or now, but it's going to be a long process. I have no bitter feelings toward law enforcement at all. Law enforcement done their job with me. I proved that I was reckless behind the wheel of a vehicle. Everything that I was charged with and convicted of, I was 100% guilty of doing. Don't make excuses. I did it. I knew what I was doing, and I got held accountable.
I believe no matter what the topic is, that can be the most difficult thing to do. Acknowledge what you have done wrong, admit that you have done wrong, and to accept the punishment and move forward. For you, moving forward with those things, you actually did some collaboration with the local police department, right?
I share with law enforcement my perspective, and they share with me theirs, so we can better support one another. And I speak in courts. Anything I can do to assist law enforcement where maybe they need some of my perspective, that's what I do. I was living with my stepdad. I think I was 31, and he got sick of my mess, and he said, "Listen, Ricky, so I'm done with you. Figure it out." He said, "You won't stop lying. You won't stop stealing. You're a terrible example to Landon. You won't keep a job." And he put me out, and I was homeless for a couple of years. And when I say I was homeless, Tiffany, that doesn't mean I was living under a bridge. I was couch surfing. I was using people. I was manipulating, and that's how I was surviving. The transition for me happened. I ended up in a rescue mission. Okay. And Tiffany, this rescue mission, I had 3 changes of clothes to my name, and that was it. I done lost everything. I was at the very bottom. I burned every bridge that I had, and my family and friends were sick of my mess. I met my wife. Meeting her saved my life. She believed in me. She saw something in me I didn't see. Prior to meeting her, meeting her motivated me to be the best possible man that I could be. And I knew that I had to be the best version of myself. Prior to meeting my wife, I was very promiscuous. I was reckless with no morals and values. My wife's the epitome of morals and values and principles. And she set boundaries. She set some boundaries with me in the very beginning. She's like, "Listen, Ricky, if we're going to be together, this is the way it's got to be." She's like, "You got to stay sober, keep a job, and respect me." And she loved me enough to hold me accountable, and I needed somebody to do that. My wife's got 2 master's degrees, and I got 3 felonies. So we're like the yin and the yang. We balance one another out. I've been sober for around 9 years now.
Let's talk a little bit about that second question as it relates to your son.
I wish I had a fairy tale story for you, Tiffany, but unfortunately, I was not the best example of a father. I was absent a lot. I did the best I knew how, and I'm not going to sit here making excuses for you. I'm not a victim. I created victims. I'm not going to tell you that I was Ricky with the disease of addiction. I knew everything that I was doing. I was held accountable. And, I paid for it. My behaviors impacted other people, and it caused a ripple effect of destruction. And the person that it affected the most was my son. Unfortunately for me, Tiffany, all the time that I spent worrying about what Ricky wanted, what Ricky needed, poor Ricky, Ricky's locked up, Ricky's addiction. I neglected the person that needed me the most, and that was my son. All the broken promises, the letdowns and lies. I would tell my son, "I love you more than life. I'll do anything for you," but I wouldn't get sober for him. I was putting other criminals, other people lost in addiction, and I was putting my own addiction above him. The message I was sending to him was, "These people are more important to me than you." I would steal from my own kid to get high, Tiffany, something I think about every single day. To make the long story short, my son felt like he didn't have any worth or value. On December 12, 2015, I get a phone call. My 18-year-old son went to a city park and he hung himself. He took his own life. As you can imagine, it knocks the piss out of me every single day. I go to sleep with a broken heart. I wake up with a broken heart. I'm not mad at my son, and I'm not mad at God. My son made a bad choice. The way that I choose to look at it is, my son's death killed me, but it inspired me. It inspired me to be a better person. Prior to his death, Tiffany, I was already sober, and I was finally able to be the father to him that I neglected being for so long. I I probably had 2 or 3 good years with him that he saw this transition in my life. So I'm thankful for that. I explain to people, there's days that I do blame myself, but what I can tell you for sure is my behaviors impacted his mental health. And that's going to happen. And I tell people, the way that we treat other people matters. The broken promises, the letdowns, the lies. So every single day when I leave my house, I'm very aware from the beginning how I treat people matters. When I leave my house, I'm held accountable from the very beginning. There's days that I wake up discontent, pissed off. I don't have license. I can't drive. I got 3 felonies. My son's dead. There's many excuses I could use to be a negative individual, but I refuse to do that. I refuse to take out my trauma on other people. The quote that I live by is, if a man is right, his world is right. People often ask me, does it get easier? And it's not that it gets easier, but I'm just more prepared and better equipped to deal with it now than what I used to be. It's like riding a wave of emotions that comes and it goes. I'm just somebody that I don't sit and I don't lay in it. I don't let myself get obsessed and consumed with it, because it will control me. So now I try to do something positive with my life and try to do the best that I can by giving back. Talk about the red flags that I saw with my son, how my behaviors impacted his life. Tiffany, when I share about the way my behaviors impacted his life, I don't say that. I don't do that to people. I'm not there to shame them or judge them or insult them. I'm just sharing with them what I did myself and how I saw it impact my son. And my hope is for that they can, if they're doing the same things, that they can look at themselves in the mirror and be like, you know what, I need to make some changes. I can see, what Ricky was talking about. So.
At the end of the day, I think what matters most is not all the bad or negative things that a person has done in their life, but what a person does from this point on that makes a difference. So to use you for an example, the illegal substances that you found yourself caught up in, the getting in trouble with the law, losing your driver's license because of those mistakes that you made. Yes, those things happened. And you said that you take the onus of those mistakes that you have made. So at this point, you have a choice. You can either wallow in your sorrows of losing your son, or woe is me because I did this or I did that or I didn't do this. Or the better choice is to get the counseling, the help, the resetting of your mindset to move forward in life, to live a better, more positive life. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. But not only that, you're taking the loss of your son, you're taking the bad decisions that you have made, and you're using your story to collaborate with law enforcement. You're using your story to help others that you interact with to not make the same mistakes that you have. And if you run into somebody who has made that same mistake, you're saying, hey, look, I get it. I've been there. You need to watch yourself, or you might find yourself in the same place that I found myself. And I think that's amazing, to be able to take your junk and use it for the good of the community and those who you come across.
Oh, so and piggyback off of what you just said, a quote that I live by is, a smart man learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And that's why I'm so open about sharing, my life. Let my trauma be your treasure. Learn from me. So, yeah, I agree.
Earlier, you mentioned something about some traumatic events that happened to you at a young age or in your childhood. Do you care to elaborate on any of those things?
Yes. So 2 things that had a very traumatic impact on my life was being sexually violated. I got molested as a kid. I was a young kid. I was probably between the ages of 6, 7, and 8, somewhere in that time frame. It was by an older cousin. I got molested. It wasn't a scenario where I was just held down and somebody overpowered me. It was one of those situations where I knew it was wrong. I knew something wasn't right, and I hesitantly participated. I didn't realize until later on down the road in my life that, looking back, that I was taken advantage of and I was violated. I didn't tell my mother about it until I was probably, it wasn't It was probably about a year before my mother passed away. So it was way down the road. I never told anybody who it was. I just, I dealt with it. But obviously, suppressing those things, it had a very traumatic impact on my life. I get to the Marine Corps, and I didn't start sharing this publicly till about a few years ago. But I was 21 years old, naive, from a small town, confident. I thought I could handle myself, and I was working security at a bar in Beaufort, South Carolina. I was working at the door checking IDs. I was invited to an after party, and I didn't know anybody, but I'm like, I'm young, I'm gonna go check it out just to experience the area. And I went. I drank very heavily. Like I said, I never could drink in moderation. Looking and Tiffany, looking back, a lot of me drinking was me running from the things that had happened to me, and I was numbing myself by doing that. So I go to this party. I drank very heavily, passed out. I was inebriated and incoherent, and I was awakened by another male attempting to undo my pants. And it sent a bit of rage through me that I can't explain. That scenario it still impacts me. There's times that there's certain behaviors related to what happened to me that I still could easily let it consume me with hate, but I don't want to live that way. I've learned to deal with it. I was at a presentation with the Marines about a month ago, and a young lady came up to me afterwards, and she said, "Sir, have you ever gotten over that? And do you still have anger?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." I was like, I'll never get over it, but I've just learned to, I accept it as part of life. It's like riding a wave. I just don't let it consume me. So, Tiffany, to be honest with you, I'll share some things of the way it's affected my life, experiencing sexual trauma. For instance, when I go to the gym, and when I go to the gym locker room, it's like for me, it's like walking into a minefield. Seeing male nudity is not something that I desire. So it's like I just keep my head down. If I have the option to use a stall instead of a urinal to use the restroom, I always choose the stall because I like that security. I don't like anybody around me. That's just my preference. With intimacy with my wife, I'm a very modest guy, very reserved. The thought of my wife ever feeling pressured by me is something that disturbs me because I'm farthest from that. So that's another thing that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's something that I still carry with me. With kids, I love kids. I'm very protective of kids, but I still, at times, I'm not very comfortable holding a little kid. And the reason is because I never want that child to look at me the way that I look at the people who, violated me. So I'm always very cautious with kids. So those are just some of the things that I still experience to this day that's related to experiencing sexual trauma. And if anybody that's listening to this, male or female, but especially males, because I know a lot of males probably have a difficult time opening up about this. You're not alone with how you feel. The feelings you have about this it's real, it's valid. I can't tell you that I know how you feel, but I can definitely relate to it. And I'm in this fight with you. And my heart goes out to you if anybody's ever experienced that.
Marine Corps veteran Ricky Johnson, thank you so much for coming out and sharing your story with me and the audience of the Medal of Honor podcast. I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this. I wish you all the best as you move forward in life, impacting other people's lives from your experiences in life.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Tiffany.
Robin Phoenix Johnson.
Good morning.
You're silly. I'm on my second cup of coffee, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like such an old lady. I just don't do well when I'm up late anymore. I'm an early to bed, early to rise person. So if I'm up past midnight, that is a big deal. Like, I don't even stay up for New Year's anymore. That's how old I am.
Oh yeah, I'm the same way. New Year's, I'm gonna go to bed. When I wake up, it'll be a new year. I'm good to go with that.
Yep, that is exactly right.
How was your show last night?
Comedians were funny. I mean, I had a new comedian, local comedian in Charleston, Ryan Quinn. He's really funny. Pia Helm's daughter, Kevin Williams, Alex Scott was my headline. I mean, they all did great. It's hard on a Monday night to get people to come out to comedy. It was fun. Like we had about half tourists and half locals. Really nice crowding. Very, you never know. Like the night after Will Smith slaps the crap out of Chris Rock, you're like, what's going to happen? Am I going to get slapped or make fun of one of the people in the audience? So yeah,
none of you comedians need to be slapping the other one now. Don't be Will Smith.
No, I think that was so horrible. I mean, granted, Chris Rock did call his wife a Navy lieutenant, which I would be offended too. There's no room for that anywhere. The fact that he did that and so unapologetically and just, this whole like I'm defending my wife. No, shut up. There's never a point. It's not like if he was groping her or physically touching her or something, that's one thing. But he's a comedian. Like, he's literally supposed to do jokes. And making fun of people is what we get paid to do. So, yeah, I thought it was very poor taste, and I was super disappointed because up until that point, I thought highly of Will Smith, and then my entire perception of him and was just shattered. I was so disappointed. And
oh my goch, I thought I was the only one. I feel the same way.
No. I grew up watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I grew up, watching all his movies. I loved him in Hitch. I loved him in Men in Black. He's a very talented actor, but he's obviously got too big for his britches. And to feel that entitled, that you can just go up and strike and he could have handled it so much better. You just say hey man, that's not cool, or, shut the heck up or whatever. But for him to go slap and just go off like that, it literally looked like he was having a mental breakdown. And just so unprofessional. And anyway, yeah. Robin, you make me sound good.
Thank you, and have a nice day.